Welcome to Permission to Heal. I am Marcy Brockman, and I am so glad you're here. In this podcast, we engage in meaningful, deeply human conversations using our voices to inspire connection, compassion, understanding, empathy, and wholehearted wellness. I want you to find the courage to transform yourself no matter what others tell you. Only you can give yourself permission to trust yourself, permission to take care of yourself, permission to follow your heart and desires, and build a life of love, home, and belonging. Through sharing our stories, we will help each other to heal and create the healthy, meaningful lives we richly deserve. We only need our own permission to begin. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Permission to Heal. I have April Giauque here with me today. I'm very excited. She was the second person to fill out the guest survey to be on Permission to Heal, and here she is 6 months later. We finally got our act together. And for those of you who can see it on the YouTube channel, she's signing as we go because she's a deaf educator. Is that how you say it?
Right. Yeah. Great.
Okay, good. So April, welcome.
Well, welcome to you too. I'm really excited to be here, Marcy. It is great to finally connect. And I'm really glad that we took the time to kind of delay it until now. For both of us, I'm assuming that school is out for you. School is out for
still
me.
Going.
Oh, you're still going. I'm out. So whew, for me. Sorry
Yes.
For you.
But
close. It's kind of this enjoy time. Good. I'm glad to hear you're close. That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I think everybody is ready to jump out of their skin. Yeah, we're just so done.
Yes. Finished. It is time to go onto the beach, go have some popsicles and just sit underneath an umbrella and just be outside. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure teaching in COVID was not an easy thing. It was
a
big mess.
Yes, it was. It was very interesting. But we carried forward and marched on as those essential people shall. Yes, we did.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I usually begin the interviews with the 6 quick questions, and we'll see where we go from there.
Okay.
You ready?
Ready.
Okay. What 6 words would you use to describe yourself?
Okay. Let's see. Driven.
Definitely.
Excited.
Definitely.
Light. How do I put that into a word? Let me think. In my ASL, it comes very quickly. So hang on. Put it into English here. We'll say mom.
Okay.
Number 5. Let's see. Musical. And number 6, a writer.
Good words. Good words. I like that they're a mixture of adjectives and nouns. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. What's your favorite way to spend a day?
My favorite way to spend a day is probably helping other people, finding something to do service-wise and just jumping in there. When I'm focused here, I usually find really junky stuff. So if I focus out there, I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome. So that's a better way to spend the day. Yeah.
I like that idea. It's interesting because when you're trying to heal yourself from something, I think looking for forgiveness or validation or something external to yourself is the opposite of what you should do, because that's what this podcast is about. We're supposed to give ourselves permission to do those things for ourselves. And yet when you're looking for meaning in your life, you really need to start looking outside of yourself.
Right. It's definitely a catch-22, because if you only look outside, then you deplete yourself and are empty. But I think the opposite can also be true. If we're only focused here trying to find this healing and staying here, well, if you're not connected with other people, you can't possibly help to pull yourself out of the healing. Right. So it is a balance, and that is the permission, I think, is if you fall in too far, you go in too far. So this is the sign even for autism. Like you stuck right here.
I like that.
And if you go out, then you're not grounded on on anything. So it's kind of this mixture of both. And so the balance, I feel personally needs to be there. Of course, you've got some time and you should take that permission for your time, but the timing of it, it doesn't have to be this really planned out special kind of thing. It can be found within the 10 minutes of your life. And maybe that's me as being a woman and being a mom of 9 kids. I find myself within the healing. I find within the everyday activity, that's my best time that I actually connect with God, with deity, with this idea of constantly kind of going through my healing checklist. Because while I'm in action, even if it's with laundry or dishes or whatever, my mind is thinking because of the physical action that's happening. And I find myself closer in that moment. If I'm to sit and be quiet for myself, it doesn't work. And it works for others. So I'm not saying one or the other, but I know for myself, when people say, well, what do you do? How do you? I'm kind of programmed this way to do it. So when I'm doing those things, it's also kind of quiet time. Sometimes I can just plug in my music while I'm within, we'll use cooking dinner as something really simple to do, where that part allows me to just kind of zone in. I'm helping, I'm serving, we're doing something, but within the everyday activity, I find a lot of answers.
Oh yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
that's really just a beautiful thing that allows for more healing the deeper I go. And there's sometimes where I feel like within the levels, it's kind of, I'll say levels, you kind of get stuck or plateau somewhere. And if you want to try and dive deeper, I find the more that I'm actually doing, I can find some of those places. But it can't be chaotic either, right? Like it can't be helping the kids with homework while I'm cutting the onions. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, in some type of action or whatever, there's moments where I'm like, okay, got it. So I'm probably weird where I'm like, I'll cut the grass. I'm going to go out and cut the grass right now because that's total action, but it's very focused.
Right.
And no one can really bother me. No one can be by the danger of the lawnmower. And I'm in the zone.
The sound to
and I got that
exactly.
Exactly. So anyone out there, especially with summertime, it's a great little cheat thing. And your arms get to work out and your butt does too. So I'm always like win.
Yeah, I'm with you about the sensory and the movement of sort of a mindless activity like dishes or cleaning or cooking or something. And you get in your own head and you can start thinking about stuff, and I find that sometimes more effective as a meditative technique than sitting and being quiet. Although that works sometimes too. So
right. Yeah.
Balance. Especially when I'm full of acupuncture needles and I can't move anyway.
Right.
Yes. Okay, let's get to question 3. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Probably one of them is of my dad standing at the side of the old name used to be called Patio Springs. And it was this little, I would say, golf course resort swimming area thing that my grandparents belonged with. And every once in a while we were able to go to Patio Springs up in the mountains and go swimming. Well, they had this enormous swimming pool, and not because I was a little kid enormous, like it was a true Olympic sized pool. So it was enormous. And they had 3-level diving boards, not platform like Olympic platform, but 3 diving boards. And my dad saying to me, how brave are you to jump off the top? I was 3. And I was no. I'm going. I climbed right up there. And he has a picture of me. My hands like in a diving position. And he snapped that picture and off I went. And I landed in the water and I kind of paddled up to the front. I mean, this was in the 70s. So there wasn't a lifeguard watching, no one was like, save the child. It was just like, go do it. And I jumped off, came up, and I got up, got this high five. And he's like, do you want to do it again? I'm like, yeah. That was this freeing moment that if I felt someone could believe in me, that's it. and no problem. And there was just this positivity. I remember feeling like I can do almost anything. It was not arrogant, but freeing. And I
Sure.
think as a child, it's just that sense of innocence, and I carry that with me in my motherhood for sure. I've got kids that do things that I'm like, hey, let's go. Like just this week, the Twin Falls Bridge, the Perrine Bridge. It's a base jumping bridge, the only one in America. So you can stand up there with a parachute and jump off.
Oh my God.
Well, I brought my kids over there. They don't have parachutes. We did not base jump. So let's put that down for a second. But it's a full on freeway.
Hmm.
And you just have like a little barrier between you and the bridge and these semis passing you. So I knew for the kids to experience that, I'd have to do it without my husband. Sorry, love you, hubby. But he would have been too panic nervous.
Hmm.
For me, I'm like, yeah, let's look over the edge. And so they really
April's an
had this,
adventurer.
yes, they really had this fun time. And, we set some ground rules prior to going out, and they followed them, and it was fun and enjoyable. And so I think in ways like that, if you set those boundaries,
Hmm.
they know what the expectations are, and then you can go out, you really can feel that sense without being worried or panicked. And of course, we selected a day that wasn't going to be too busy.
Hmm.
I mean, you got to put some smarts into this, but it
Right.
was really fun and enjoyable. And then later on, we went down to the falls, and they got to see the water just tower over these falls. And again, they're like, wow. And so it's fun to experience that kind of thing and have
Hmm.
those little moments together. So there you
Sure.
go.
And the awesome power of nature, you know.
Wow, it is amazing.
Incredible. I remember the first time I went to Niagara Falls at seeing that volume of water ferociously going over the. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
watching you sign. It's so cool. Okay, what's your favorite meal?
Meal. Ooh. Anything with a salad with some yummy cheese, some meat, some candied nuts. Mix that sucker all together.
Fabulous.
Yeah, forever. Yep. That's
Now I
happy,
want a
happy.
salad, April.
It's got to have those elements in it, but ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
deal.
there's a restaurant nearby that we always go to for celebrations, and they have a pear salad with like mixed greens and
Mm,
pears and candied pecans and a
yes.
little bit of goat cheese
Goat
and
cheese. Yeah.
oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah. That's me.
I wasn't gonna get it. We went there for my birthday in May, and I wasn't gonna get it because I wasn't that hungry. And my husband said, come on, you know you want it. You can always take it home."
Yeah. It's
But
good
I ate
stuff.
the whole thing, of course. Okay, question number 5. What's one piece of advice you would like to give your younger self?
I would say don't fear.
Hmm.
Don't fear. So I have these experiences that have all this stuff that eliminate fear, and yet that side of fear, right? Fear of embarrassment, fear of worry, of what is someone else going to think about me, that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
really controlled a lot of different things because I wasn't really tuned in and listening
Hmm.
and too worried about other things. And it's natural to have those ways, but the intensity that went with me with the fear, it wasn't anxiety. It was different than that. And it was just really a true battle between me and what I call that shame shadow, which I'm sure we'll get into a little later.
Mm,
So, yeah, interesting.
interesting. Okay, what is the one thing you would most like to change about the world? It's a little question.
Little question. So, the one thing I'd like to change about the world is that to remember we are not a respecter of people. We're one. And all the colors, all the cultures, all of everything makes the uniqueness of us, but it doesn't separate the level. You don't have to categorize and label and identify people in all of these places.
People are just people.
Yeah. Embrace, love, and bring them in. And it drops everything. Look at how children see each other, right?
Hmm.
Little ones. That there's They are free and they're like, ah, human love. You want to play with me?
Right.
That's it. So if we would stop focusing so much on all of this type of,
The
they
external
have,
things.
yeah, if we just stop and just embrace and love, which I think really a lot of people do, but the overall mega voice of, we'll say media, is not, is not allowing, permitting. It's just this constant drive.
Mm-hmm.
If you just step out of that, right? It's kind of like that huge thing of like a river that's just roaring. If you just step to the side of it,
It goes
that's
by.
it. It goes by. So you don't have to jump into it. It's all good.
It's a very good metaphor, actually.
Thank you.
You must be a writer.
Hmm.
Must be. Okay, so let's talk about your childhood, your background. Where does April come from? What was your childhood like? What formed you to be you?
So what formed me to be me is definitely my family. My family base is love how I grew up and where I grew up. I remember, and I share this, one of these little stories in my second book, about watching my dad go out in the snowstorms in the early morning, and I could hear this little purring sound of a little motor,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the snowblower, and he was out on the street blowing out these the driveway and the sidewalk for the widows that were on our block.
Oh, that's
And I
sweet.
always watched that. And I remember one time getting up and kind of being in the shadow and sneaking with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew he saw me, but I was trying to, like, he wouldn't see me. And
Mm-hmm.
I just was helping as best I could, 5 or 6, right? So I don't know. Maybe I cleared a foot. I don't know what I
Right.
even cleared. But I tried to help. But I remember noticing that, like, okay, getting out, doing something. And that growing up, I really enjoyed reading. All I'm the Laura Ingalls Little House in the Big Woods was my very first book, and when I read that book, I was like, Charles Ingalls is like, that was
I
that
loved
was my
that
dream
too.
boat right there, because he loved his family and he would go out and do whatever he could to provide, to help, and the whole family joined in and did everything. And I just was like, that right there, that. And then I pulled out of that and watched my family did similar things. We were up on the eaves, painting the eaves. I was with my mom constantly doing the canning, preserving all the food that we grew in the garden. And I'm like, oh, my life is like that. Like, it was this exciting part.
Grew up in Utah?
I did. I grew up in Utah,
Okay.
and from like pioneer heritage, that idea of, make it do, wear it. Let's see. I can't remember the little adage that it has, but basically, whatever it is that you have, you make it do, you wear it out, you do everything possible before you toss it away.
Right.
It's kind of the overall view of that. And I realized, wow, this is really what we do here. And it was amazing. And then when I was 8, um, this is unfortunate, but it helped to it helped me now to understand so many different things. I was sexually molested by a neighbor,
Oh no.
and I share this story within my second book. And this whole concept of the summer of what happened was awful. And that's when things started to change and shift, where I'd had this amazing amount of light in my life. And then this dip into darkness, which was just like, it was confusing. I didn't understand. And as children, you just don't. And of course, played the, if you tell, then here are the threats, right?
Sure.
And so, of course, you just keep it in, you don't say anything, and then that little thing just starts to eat you alive. So then I
Mm-hmm.
was struggling with this amount of good, and it wasn't that anyone was perfect, but that concept of, I knew what was good, and that over there was not okay. And, struggling between these two, um, of, I guess you'd say,
Dichotomies.
energies,
Yeah.
or this kind of thing. It was like, wow, something's messed up. And so as a kid, you try to put that in and figure it out. And I didn't ask a lot of questions. I'm better with observing than really asking a lot of questions, especially when I was younger and in my teenage years.
Well, you don't know
So
how to
I would,
verbalize things yet.
no, really not. So that was this piece in my life, but it didn't overshadow everything either. So I
Did
want to
you
make
tell
that
anyone?
clear. I didn't really tell anyone because of what the threats were.
Sure.
And so I just kind of, and I didn't like leave it at that. I wasn't able to completely like, okay, well, that happened, that's over there, and now I'm sailing up this way. It was still this piece, but I
You were
was
able to
able,
compartmentalize it a bit?
yeah, probably. It was probably just okay. And I put a lot of energy into sports. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I started doing competitive power tumbling, I started to compete on a national level. And then I was
Wow.
part of the United States team and competed in my first World Games when I was 14.
Holy crap,
And
I didn't know this.
yeah, I took second in the
Wow.
world and I have 4 national titles. So I just put my
April,
energy.
you're just a badass, aren't you?
Okay.
Oh.
Like my hero was Mary Lou Retton. I was ready to just hitchhike to Texas, and I was like, here I go. I'm gonna just join, and I'm just gonna do this because I was instilled with that, right? Right, jumping off that diving board, I was like, oh,
Sure.
I can do these things, and so that was the confusing is if I had this stuff, how did I let that happen? Of
Well,
this
if you were a
start,
little girl, you didn't have the power there.
no power, but you see where that struggle comes in.
Of course.
And you're like, wow. So then you make different decisions in your life, and as things go, you're like, all right, things can get better. And so I had kind of gone through the high school thing and finished my power tumbling career and cheerleading, and I became a college cheerleader. That's what put me through college. And then I decided to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I served in Carlsbad, California, and teaching people about the gospel and God and who they are was amazing. And yet this still little piece of darkness was just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you
Festering
haven't
away.
you haven't dealt with me yet. We're coming. And I didn't understand and realize what all of that was
Mm-hmm.
and how it would impact me later. And I just knew I wanted the family. I wanted the Charles Ingalls family, right? I knew after I did that and finished college that I wanted to probably become a teacher and I wanted to be a mom. And so I was on my way for both of that and found my husband, my first husband, and there we go. So it's kind of the weirdness of the background, but I really hadn't dealt deeply within this. I had done a little bit of counseling and I was very checklist and goal oriented. So with a mindset like that, it's not bad, but it doesn't exactly fit with healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like I'm like, oh, and I'm done. We went through the 12 sessions. I am feeling so much better.
Right.
Great. And so you take that to be like, okay, cool. And that's part of it. But I didn't realize that I really didn't understand the concept of journey because it's more project based, like
Sure.
finish, complete. Wait, I guess I'm still walking here. Well, where am I
Exactly.
going?
Yeah, there's no
So
prescribed time that these things
I,
take. Right.
yeah, rats. And that's kind of what I was like, oh. So that's a little bit of the background from where we are.
Okay. So with your first husband, you had 5 kids?
5 kids. Yep.
5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then that got pretty dark itself.
Yeah, it did, which was a very interesting cycle. So I've shared this before, but so got married. He had the same goal as I did. We wanted to have this family. We both had similar faith and we had made same covenants. And so we're like, okay, we're ready. Same team, same dream. Let's go. And we knew there would be problems. I wasn't ignorant to that, but I figured together as a team, we would face the problems.
Sure.
I didn't realize that he had been suffering through a lot of childhood trauma that he had never healed from, but just numbed from.
Mm-hmm.
So when you numb
That
from, it usually
is the
becomes,
story with a lot of people.
yeah, with many, many things. And I couldn't understand numbing as far as drugs and alcohol. Couldn't understand
But
it.
you numbed with projects.
Exactly. Right. So, but for me, it was like, don't get it, because this is a healthier way to deal than what that is.
Oh, yeah.
But it can still be unhealthy as well, which I
Yeah, I
realized
chose what
later.
you chose. I chose task oriented, goal
Mm-hmm.
oriented. Let's go to college. Let's get a master's. Let's get
Yes.
another master's. Let's have kids. Let's teach. Let's keep doing and doing and doing and
Doing.
doing. And
Mm-hmm.
it kept me in motion so that I
Right.
never allowed myself the quiet time necessary to
Mm-hmm.
address the traumatic demons from the past,
From the past,
which were
right?
just sort of festering in the corners, waiting.
Like, I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog
Exactly.
too. Yeah, the whole thing. And
Right.
yeah. So within this first marriage, that as he numbed and I couldn't understand this, he also he parked his pain, which I say this in my book. He parked his pain next to um, a monster that it happily fed. And what it feasted on was becoming into this mental illness that's schizophrenia. And it's within his family. And it erupted in his early 20s, right when we were married, and didn't realize it. And not to share too much in my first book about it, my first book is Pinpoints of Light, Escaping the Abyss of Abuse. And I share what this story, how his mental illness and what happened and how it turned into abuse. And I call this, people who abuse are either hunters, so they know their prey, they seek out for them, they camouflage, very narcissistic, they pull them in, they're very controlling and power focused. Then the other side of the abuse category are caged animals. And I say that really fully because as a caged animal, the being within the cage does not know if you are there to help them or to hurt them.
Right.
And abuse is the result. They're going to strike out because they don't know. So whether they are stuck within the numbing of drugs and alcohol, mental illness, and I'm not saying that a hunter can't also have those elements, but they truly know who they're seeking out to control.
Sure.
The other, they just try to control whatever they can within the moment that
close enough. Right.
Right. And we definitely had that other piece. We had the more of the caged animal side of things because he was dealing within the element of schizophrenia as well as drug and alcohol abuse. And so we have 5 children where at my first child, these things were not erupting. But by the second child, they had fully exploded. And then we kind of go through this repentance phase and okay, things are all right again. Well, why is my hand going down? We've repented, things are going great. It's getting to this point, and then suddenly it's no good. And then we get to this cycle of, okay, we're going to come back to reality again, and I can see where we are, but we never quite get to this level. And then we're okay for a while, and then we get dipped down and we go up. So I had 5 cycles. I have 5 children. See, the point of all of this is like when we felt like we were more stable, but we were, it's not really stable when you're headed down like that. I would discover I was pregnant again, and then things would roll. So within 9.5 years, I had 5 children. So you can math that out.
Yeah.
It was kind of, very quick and challenging. So by the time the 9th year had rolled around, I had come to that point of this is recognizing that this is abuse, can't happen, and now it's bleeding onto the kids. And I say that word bleeding with true literal form of it. And when the time came, we had about 7 minutes to grab things and to escape.
Wow.
And we did.
7 minutes.
7 minutes. And within this, we suddenly became the cat and mouse of this hunting game. Even though I said he was not a hunter, at this point, we had become the prey. And so it took a while for us to actually get safe and get out. We were homeless, but I never lost my job, my teaching job. And that was one thing that we had to really emphasize on. So if we're now talking directly to anyone who is suffering with domestic violence, the point about all of this is you have to make a plan. Anyone who's going to leave, you must make a plan, and it has to have some financial viability to it. And the safety of your life actually really depends on these things. So please make your exit plans. I share so many different ways to do this on my website, apriltribegiauque.com. And I also list other types of resources and things there because anyone, if you really are trying to escape, you must make a plan. It doesn't happenstance because then you will return.
Right.
On average, it's 7 times you return back because they love bomb. The forgiveness is there. You feel like you're safe again. But really all it is the same kind of cycles that I was.
It's of the same cycle.
Of the same cycle. So it's not true. Once you get away, you cannot go back to the toxicity. You cannot go back to the same person. You cannot. Now they can change. Absolutely. And they have the opportunity and ability to, but never with you. Now there might be a 0.002% out there, but for the most part, we're going to say never with you. It just doesn't happen. And the analogy that I use on that is, think about a lighthouse. A lighthouse is foundationally sound upon the rocks, and it is shining its beacon of light, its light out towards anyone who is in the stormy seas of their life, right? They are not the Coast Guard. They are not the ones out there in rescue. But you can shine your light out there and be a beacon. And your spouse, your partner, whomever it is that is in that lost bit of chaos, they will get rescued by something else other than you. A lighthouse is not found and drowning within that water. It is foundationally sound, safe.
What a fabulous metaphor.
So you really need to really, really remember that. And they can come into the harbor, but once they come into the harbor, they have to go their own way and become a lighthouse for someone else.
Rocks themselves.
Exactly. So that's that whole concept. So with domestic violence, I really want everyone to realize that you don't have to stay and remain a victim. In fact, I encourage you never to call yourself a victim of it. And I also encourage you to never call yourself a survivor of it, because those are two identities that are very based in shame or in revenge. There's a lot of energy wasted that you can't actually get really good healing from and really continue with your journey. So get into a thriving zone of things and become a victor. And true victors forgive, and they understand, and they have that empathy that's really deep. So don't beat yourself up that you're not there yet. Keep working on it. Ask Marcy, ask myself. There's so many of us that have stories of healing and leaving abuse, and there's definite ways to do it. So that's kind of the DV speech of today, I think.
That's awesome. So both of your books, where are we? Sorry. My notes are, the font is too small.
No worries,
the font is too small. So Pinpoints of Light, Escaping the Abyss of Abuse is your first book about escaping the abuse with the 5 children. And then most recently, last summer, you published Out of Darkness.
Yes.
Which and is the healing journey.
That's the healing journey. Yes. And so in my first one, it's very much like a novel, this memoir. I wanted you to just experience the story. I wanted you to panic when I was panicked. I wanted you to feel the when I was I wanted that. I didn't want to have at the back of each chapter saying, and this is what I learned. That book was designed for the story. My second book is, okay, remember some of the things that happened over here? Well, here's some other stories. And do you relate to it? And what did you learn from this? And here's what I learned. So it's more that type of more setting, more self-help, right, kind of thing. But very important, because I really had to face that. Now, I didn't realize I was going to really actually get to writing all of this till I was 43. I just turned 47. So this is pretty recent. And within that concept of out of darkness and of discovering being out of darkness, what that meant was actually I had an experience when I was watching something, and I've shared this story, where I was watching someone express their love of when they had their first child. It was a son, and she just had this overwhelming feeling of how much she loved and adored him. And she said this key word, this key phrase, and he didn't do anything. Right. She loved him
just for
being. And if you really think about that, we are human beings,
not human doings. Right.
We are being. And that was a smackdown for me from above. It was like, I've been trying to teach you that forever, because I just didn't understand. I thought I had to do. So in my wrong connection when I was 8, when all of these things had happened, I thought then I had to start proving my worth to understand how to be loved. I had connected that because I hadn't asked questions. Right. I'm sure if I piped up, my family would have been like, no, like, we love you anyway. You don't have to prove yourself.
Right.
And that, I never really used that term, like, I need to prove my love. But internally, something like that was going on.
I had the finally same feeling that it was only through
something.
Service, through making other people happy through
Right.
getting good grades, doing chores for my mom, or, whatever it
Yeah.
was. It was those things that tended to make her happy. My mom was
Right.
bipolar, so doing those things
Ah,
tended to bring out the Mary Poppins side of her. So
right.
I learned doing things for mom makes mom happy, makes my life easier, makes me feel better. So it just reinforced, the harder I work, the more I get love.
Right. And
It's a sickness.
yeah, it it's not true healthy. It's not the trueness of love. And so when I discovered that, I'm in my second marriage. I now have 9 kids. We had added 4 more kids to the batch because I don't know, I'm a rabbit, whatever. I just had 4 more kids, like
The
bam.
most fertile woman I've ever known.
Seriously. Oh, so there we are with this huge family, and I finally get the impact of like, oh wow, I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to do anything. And so I thought I was going to like sit in this silent moment of
Uh-huh.
like, oh, this is beautiful. No, I got this strong impression like, get up and start writing. And I'm like, yeah, I will do that. He's like, now? I I was just blowing my nose on like the socks from the laundry because we were folding while we were watching this whole thing. So I
Right.
literally had to get up and I had to open up my computer and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be typing here, but apparently I'm supposed to be. And I that's kind of like the first part of this
Wow.
blob I was just started to write. And then it all started to come forward. And it was like, this is not for you anymore, girl. You've had these experiences. We've been trying to tug you through. You could have finished this in your 30s, but now you're 40, whatever. At least you got here. And I'm like,
Exactly.
oh, okay. So that's basically where the out of darkness come because I want people to realize you can come out
Yeah.
of this darkness. You can leave your shame shadow. So that's what I call that voice in your head, the negativity that's happening that we all hear, your self-destructive speech, blah, 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 blah. I labeled him a shame shadow
That's a
because
great word or
if you
phrase.
really think about this, we are always within light. I believe in a deity. I believe in a God. I believe in Heavenly Father. And many people call him something differently, and that's fine. But if there's something higher than you, that is the energy of light. Light is a wave and it can stretch forward. Scientifically, it's out there. It will stretch for billions
Light
and
years.
trillions of exactly
Right.
towards you. So we are constantly in light. But because we are a physical object, a physical being, what is behind us
A
forever?
shadow.
A shadow. So he will always be back there, always trying to do the negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our choice to turn and look at our dark side, our shadow, and be like, oh yeah, I suck. Or you can simply rotate. Wow,
Toward
that
the
light's
light.
been that light's been there like the whole time. Okay. Really? Yeah, the whole time. And I know that is so simple,
The
but it
simple
really
is the
is that
best.
simple. It really, really is that simple. Once I realized this opposition is in all things. We have to have this darkest, craziest black hole within the universe to hold us all together. And we have to have the absolute intense, amazing light to feed us and give us energy. And you have to have that balance. So the negative
Wow.
is always behind you and the light is always in front of you. And this is also universally true. You will always and forever have a choice
Right.
on how you can respond to whatever is happening.
Mm-hmm. And it's that response is what
The
defines you, not
response.
the experience itself.
Yep, exactly.
Beautiful.
That's it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have
You're welcome.
chills. I have chills. I literally have goosebumps. You can't see them, but I have goosebumps. So, how did you meet Scott?
Okay.
Scott's your second
Best.
husband, your current
Scott
husband.
is, yes, Scott is my second husband, current husband. So, of course, we met online because that's what you do in 2008.
Right.
So, I had escaped in 2006 and I was very much into Dr. Laura. And Dr. Laura says, you're not dating anyone, you focus on your family, you raise them, and then when you're older, you can go and do whatever.
Right.
So that was like in my ears ringing, ringing. I'm like, I'm gonna just follow that. That's it. And so I just battened down the hatches and went for it until my son had this horrific accident, was almost going to lose his arm,
Oh God.
freak kind of thing. I am miles and miles away. I have to drive towards him to the hospital. The phone call's going crazy. Like, we have to do emergency surgery. Do we have permission? I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So I'm trying to get to the hospital. And of course, it's in a snowstorm.
Oh God.
And I'm just like, I
This
just
is a
reached
movie
out.
right here. Right.
I know, right? I just screamed and I'm like, I can't do this by myself anymore. As soon as I said the word more, I was like, I take it back, I take it back, I take it back. Because what did I see in my brain? I saw me opening the door to all this line of guys because I had to start dating. And
Right.
I was just like, it freaked me
That's a
out. I was like,
monster.
no,
Yeah,
no,
I was
no.
dating in my 40s too. It's a freaking mess. Yeah.
Crazy. I'm like, no, 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 this can't happen. Anyway, it started happening. So in 2008, that's when I'm like, okay, fine, I guess I'm ready. So started the online dating, met Scott. And how I met Scott, of course, online. We went to our first date. First date is amazing, but I can't share it. There's just too many things about it.
Sure.
But it's not amazing in like white horse and the night on China. No, no,
Right.
no, no. It was the absolute essence of reality. And I'm like, this I can handle because this is real. This is not going to be anything fake
Right.
happening, right? We'd gone through that battle of like, what? The schizophrenia side of life? No,
Right.
no, this is the reality. And I'm like, that I can do. And he was like, 5 kids. I have no children. I've been a bachelor for 45 years. I have no other anything. I'm in. Yeah,
Wow.
okay. Yeah. I described this, and for those who are Christian believers, the story of Joseph, who was Mary's espoused wife, as she was pregnant with Jesus. Many people know the story. Think about Joseph for a minute. We believe that he was handpicked from God. God notified him and said, hey, I need you to be the earthly father of my son. Can you do that? Just resonate that for just a minute, whether you believe or not
Right.
believe. A step parent raised the Son of God here on earth. That is amazing to me. And so I identified with that story so connectedly that Scott was my Joseph, where he was
Wow.
picked to come and help support these 5. And I knew more children would come. And again, it's not like the it isn't an image of this Pinterest perfection at all, but it is real. And it's
He's willing
true
to roll up his
love.
sleeves and get in the muck
Yeah.
and deal
Get
with
in.
the slog it away with you after day after day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a slog fest with teenagers because
Mhm.
you're not my real dad, and I mean, it happens. They say terrible things, and we respond with terrible things, and then we're looking at our reactions, and then we all kind of stop and look at each other as every mud's dripping off all of us. Like,
Right.
that's great,
Let's
because then
let's
we
let's
still got to
start
come to
over.
family dinner, right, at the end of this. So, yeah, start over, try again. So I just want that to be really clear that he is amazing and he is willing to sacrifice and to do these things, and yet we still have to learn together. And
Mhm.
we have. It's been now 12 years, and so there's the 9 of us, 9 children. um, just amazing. And we slog through it and work through it because really the light is still shining, the darkness is back there. He's
Mhm.
had things in his past of like, that nagging voice that he's like, I'm just not good enough. And he sees more and more of his friends like, whoa, my life's good.
Mhm.
So it's helpful for him to see some of those perspectives.
Sure.
And yeah. So again, all learning together along the journey of life. So it's great. And I love him. So there you go. That's
That's
Scott.
a fabulous story, April.
Thank you.
I love the metaphoric biblical connection. That's fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love that. My husband's going to love that too when he listens to this.
There you
That's
go.
very cool. I'm going to be smiling
They're
all day.
amazing.
Yeah.
People who step in, step up. And yeah, what can you say?
Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay. So on your website, you have all sorts of, you alluded to this a few minutes ago, a supporters toolkit for building a network of survivors. You've got all sorts of information for the person who is sur- skating through domestic violence and looking for a way out. And you have a lot of information for people who want to be the supporters of somebody who they know needs a path out of a mess, which I think is amazing. And since you published Out of Darkness last summer, you've been engaging in a campaign to get Pinpoints of Light, Escaping the Abyss of Abuse, in domestic violence shelters in every single state in the country. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
as of
Pinpoints across
now,
America. Right.
right. And as of now, you've got books in domestic violence shelters in 23 states. So
Yes.
you're almost halfway there.
We're halfway there. There's 11,000 shelters. So we've given out almost 300 books in 23 states. But like I said, there's 11,000 shelters. So there's a lot more to do.
Right.
And the point about putting the Pinpoints of Light within that is it is a novel type of read. It is my memoir. But at the end of that, you see the hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point. It's not to say that here's another story that has no ending. No, no. Here's the hope. And I want to give you that hope. And I want you to find within yourself, I can. And I know many shelters have tons of amazing programs with that. And it is awesome. And when you can get an advocate who has been someone who has been a victim and who's been on the other side, that hearing, right? That idea of like, I get it. And the empathy, this is a sign for empathy because they get it and I get it at the same time. Boom. Hearts and minds together. That idea of empathy is right there. And good shelters never call them victims or survivors.
Mm-hmm.
They bring them in and show them how to heal. And then they start to label themselves as a thriver and those things. But I have to say, you go through the process of, yes, I was a victim. Yes, now I'm surviving, because it starts to start the fire. But you can't stay there. Like I said, you got to get into that thrive. And so that's the point about these pinpoints across America, is we want to get that idea out there. And I'm partnering now with her name is Lori Jean Jones, and she's also getting her book within the prison system, because together, why not? They got some time on their hands, so more things to be able to read, give them the idea of hope, possibly even some support in something higher and greater than themselves. That's that concept of, wow, we really can change. And I can't change and go back to a situation hoping for something that's not there.
Right.
I can change and hope for something that will be. And
Exactly.
that's the part about moving forward, for sure.
And you give somebody the pattern, if you will, or the roadmap to find their own way out of their own darkness.
Right.
Which is extremely important, because all of this is very unique and idiosyncratic as well, because everyone's got their own families and their own situations and so on. And it's difficult to navigate until you start to see how other people did it, and then you can start piecing together the whole thing yourself. I know I think if I leave names off the situation, she'd probably be okay with me saying, but my stepdaughter was in a domestic violence situation herself. She had a very, very, very angry, narcissistic, I think alcoholic, not sure, first husband. She had 4 kids with him, and then had to escape in the middle of the night and ran off to a shelter. But she had received information ahead of time from somebody who was connected, like a volunteer who was connected with the shelter. And she started making her plan and packing a little bit. And then she had a job, and she just left in the cloak of darkness, and got where she needed to go with the 4 small children. And I wasn't married to him yet, but my husband stepped in and rented a big house for all of them to live together in, so that they had a place to go to after they had to leave the shelter. And that's where they were all sort of cohabitating, my husband and his son and his daughter and her 4 kids. And so when I started dating him, I mean, I'd known him since 1987, but I didn't know any of this was going on. And when I started dating him, it was a very big, noisy, extended family I joined in with, and it was just like coming home. It was wonderful. And part of me fell in love with him because of the heroic, fabulous father and grandfather he is. That slinging, getting in the mud and dealing with it and making it all happen and making sure everybody was taken care of. And that was just absolutely like Superman heroic for him. For me,
it is
to see,
It is, and it's important. That part of masculinity is so important because it defines their understanding, and it's part of their makeup to protect and to provide. And so when you see that, it is like, wow,
Hmm.
there's a piece of heart there that's truly truly there, because we all need that as the family. That's how you do it, and it doesn't diminish someone's strength or intelligence. It is just part of who they are, so why not allow them to be that and connect together and thrive together? So kudos on your husband now, even though you're dating him at the time. I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. So the the shelter, the local shelter here that I brought your books to was the shelter that my stepdaughter was at
Wow.
with her kids a bunch of years, prior, and yeah, it was kind of meaningful.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't let us go to the shelter because it has a
Sure.
secret address that no one knows, but we
Right.
brought it to their,
Like the little
administrative
storefront thingy.
offices.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's part of the safety, and so a lot of people will have that experience, and that's beautiful. And that's what I love about the Pinpoints Across America is when they go and take it to the shelter or the storefront or the administration offices, however it works, that concept of like, wow, they themselves are actually handing them off, and sometimes they'll take a picture of whoever's there with them,
hmm,
and they have the experience and realize, holy cow. Like with one group of women, they realized that there were 25 shelters within one city.
wow.
Like, why do we need 25 shelters in one city? And it was
Domestic
like,
violence is
oh my gosh, that's a like, it's been a
it's in
huge,
itself its own pandemic.
right, right. One in four women in America and one in three w- worldwide. What's
Right.
happening? So yeah. So anyway, very, very interesting. So
And I think the numbers increased during the COVID
COVID,
pandemic
it did.
because people were
Yeah.
trapped at home and
Hmm.
sort of stuck like caged animals with each other. There's the caged
Right.
animal. There you
Yeah,
go.
you're just completely stuck and trapped, and very, very difficult. And so what was interesting in the second, the other part that I have is that supporters toolkit that you had alluded to. And what I saw was that, so I was the victim, survivor, thriver. Well, how did I get there? I wasn't alone. I had a network, but I didn't label them as that, but they stepped up and became that. They were true supporters.
Hmm.
Many were in my family, few were friends, and some were coworkers, and a few were even strangers. And thinking, how did all of this work together? And so then I remember thinking, when I shared this story at one of the places I was giving a lecture to, um, a few of a few of the people came up afterwards and they said, I know someone at work, I know an aunt, I know a niece, and they all knew this story and had a feeling about the abuse that was happening, whether it was verbal, physical, emotional, combinations of everything, whatever. And they're like, I feel like I have no skills. What can I do to help them? And I just remember sitting down, writing down all of these quick things, and I was just handing out papers. And I was like, oh, I just need to put this together. And I
Sure.
did. It was just this concept and idea of like, hey, if you have somebody, then here's how you can actually be a true support to somebody so that they can escape. And there's multi levels of things.
Hmm.
And it's not that you have to be all, and you're not the savior and you're not the Superman. No, no. You might be the one that only holds the bag. And you always have a place that's always open and they can grab that bag that they packed.
Right.
You might be the one that always has the car, and they're like, I need a ride. It's now, and you go. It's if you are the one that
It's a
sets
team.
limits and boundaries that say, well, you said 3 times that you were going to leave and now you're not. That's not the team member you want. Not on your team.
No.
Good people, maybe different things. Have them bring the candy at Christmas, but don't. They're not on your team, and that's okay because not everybody can be a supporter. So if you are a true supporter, you understand the empathy. You don't question who they are, and you don't set boundaries and limitations on them. Hello, that's what the abuser has done to them. And if
Exactly.
suddenly if they're racing to somebody to have support, and this supporter is like,
They
well,
don't
you
need
said
more
3 times,
grief.
exactly,
Right.
drop it. And if you are like, oh, I can't do that, that's okay, moving on.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, I have
really,
a coworker who's in just she looks like she's 19, but she's a teacher and she's in her early 30s and was in a was dating a man who she was very serious with, and they moved in together and then they broke up, but she couldn't afford to leave. So they were still living in the same apartment, and he was narcissistically sort of controlling her with fear and verbally abusing her. I don't think any physical harm had come to her, but it wasn't off the table as a possibility in the future. And she just kept saying she needs to get out, she needs to get out, but she couldn't afford, because she was really only working as a building sub, so she didn't have all the money, yada, 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 whatever. Anyway, so like a whole, like you said, this like network of people just sort of erupted out of the earth. And so she had a few coworkers. I was talking to her. There were a couple of other people. A friend of hers with a spare bedroom let her move in. So now she has a place to go. And so she was just able to leave. He was working one night and she packed up and left. And he was upset, but she said, tough crap, I'm not coming back. And start over. And I swear within 2 weeks, she looked like a totally different person. Just light and clear and peaceful. And all of that negative darkness that was like creeping over her shoulders just gone. And I'm thrilled for her.
It's awesome.
So
that's so great.
the
Tell her
story.
congratulations from me through you, however that is.
Yes, I will. So you have created a whole business around the writing and the ghostwriting, and I don't know how the speaking engagements work during COVID, but you also do speaking engagements, correct?
Right. I mean, right now a lot of things are still through Zoom and what have you, but as we're getting back together, more like smaller conferences, and then you're sharing your story, talking about the Supporters Toolkit, and helping people to understand that your story is really important. And I help many writers get started who, many of the women have experienced something and they want to then share their story. And so I help lead them through on how that actually works, and give them, for lack of a better word, like writing supports and lessons and structures.
Sure.
As well as, if they themselves aren't feeling confident enough to write it, then I can become a ghostwriter for them. But really, everyone has a story, and that concept of bringing it out to the world who could help somebody else is important. And there's lots of different ways that I've learned through different experiences that I've had of how you can do that, how you can help them. And I have like a 3-level tier on my ghostwriting, where if anyone who is within abuse that needs support as a ghostwriter, they're at the level that's kind of this, like a specialty kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for others who maybe are writing for business or other things, there's other tiers. But the concept of it is that your story is there, but we can't share what I call the victim story.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you need to write that victim story, and you probably have within journals, within social media, probably.
Right.
And that's the first step. And then we try to take you through your survivor story, which again is a huge part of that, where we find this strength. Suddenly we find this idea of like, I made it, I'm a survivor, the boxing gloves, that whole thing. I'm like, that is great. Now we're going to write the story that people want to read. I'm like,
Right.
but I did here and here. I'm like, yes. And now we're going to write the story that people want to read. Because
Right.
You'll take elements from that and actually make sense. And the readers will benefit from it.
Sure.
The first 2 stories aren't going to benefit your reader. They're going to benefit you, which is great and part of the healing process.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a whole process, and that's how we tie it together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I went a very similar thing with my book. I just sort of brain dumped the whole thing into a gigantic Word document and then separated it into chapters and so on. And it wasn't until my editor had sent it back to me with his hugely helpful notes, millions and millions and millions of notes, that really helped me fine tune it into an actual book, something that other people could read and make sense out of.
Right.
Yeah, you always need somebody else. I don't care who you are. Nobody could write anything of that magnitude by themselves.
Right. Nope, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. So do you have any last words for, that sounds so awful. Oh, I don't mean it that way. Do you have any inspirational something to close us off with?
Nothing
to like putting you on the spot.
Right. I would say take the action that you can. Never quit, because if you quit, you will be where you are. And if you want to be somewhere else, then you need to keep moving.
Beautiful. Everything you say is so poetic. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, April. This was just phenomenal, as I knew it would be. You're just a beacon of light.
There you go. Thank you, Marcy. This has been awesome. And I hope that many people have been able to find something that they can heal and find their permission to do so.
Yes, let's hope they will. Let's hope they do.
Awesome.
Thanks to all of you who support this show on Patreon. You keep Permission to Heal up and running. If you want to become a valued patron, please go to www.patreon.com/permission to heal. That's www.patreon.com/permission to heal. After we pay expenses, 25% goes to scholarships at the Karen Treatment Centers to transform lives impacted by addiction. Your support is contributing directly to helping people and their families transform and heal from addiction. This is a cause very close to my heart, as my mother died of the effects of opiate addiction, and it tore my family to pieces. Thank you so much for supporting Permission to Heal and my mission to support others through their healing journey, through addiction, through Karen Treatment Centers. You are vital to our success. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Permission to Heal. I hope you found it moving and inspirational. Please remember, you don't need anyone else's permission to trust and follow your heart. You have the power within you. Subscribe to Permission to Heal so you don't miss any new episodes, and please share this with your friends.